Hello and welcome back to Red Devils Talk. We are finally back. Oh my God, the international break has been so boring. I haven't actually watched one game. I hate it. I can't even lie to you. I hate it. I had to take a little bit of a break off football after we got tonked 6-1. So we are back and there's so much to talk about today. I'm joined by my regular co-hosts, because if I say guest, Pauly might cry again. It's Marc, Ciaran, Pauly, and Joe. We got a full house today. Buzzing boys, how are we doing?
Yeah, I think it's the first time we've had a full house, isn't it, since we've gone all EFS and everything, mate. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
I think the last time we had a full house, we won at the weekend.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Maybe that's the key.
Maybe I hope that's the key. I hope that's the key.
Well, if that's the key, we know who we're blaming for the losses.
Oh, that'll be
Marc. Yeah, Marc, you're going to get removed. But look, guys, we've got so much to talk about today. Before we start, to all the listeners, make sure you get your comments in. We want to have as much interaction as possible. We want to hear your thoughts. And also make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Follow Elite Football Show on YouTube. There's loads now. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're even on like Podbean or something like that. So just check us out. You'll find us there. And make sure you follow every single one of these lovely guys, especially Joe. Like and subscribe at the bottom. And make sure you follow EFS Media, because we have got some fantastic shows coming up and a lot of great guests coming. So let's go straight into it, guys. And let's start with Paul Scholes' comments on Anthony Martial. Now, look, I'm going to go to Pauly for this first, but I'm going to make one comment here. The sort of disrespect that Scholes is getting for his comment, and people basically completely forgetting what he's done for Man United, calling him all sorts of names under the sun because he made a comment against Martial FC. It just sort of sums up football Twitter, the modern fan, in a nutshell, doesn't it, Pauly?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It sums up this is how we treat everybody, all right? Like people look at Roy Keane differently because of how he runs his mouth. What's the perception of Graham Souness right now? No one factors in the fact that he was a great footballer because he's a caricature of himself. I mean, Roy Keane is too, but like you have to separate that. Now, as a pundit, Scholes kind of, you should shut up because he does flip-flop a lot, and all he does is criticize the club. And for someone who didn't speak at all when he was playing, he somehow has the world to say now. And I'm pretty sure you should be worried about Salford City because you are now the caretaker manager. But draw the line there. Like if you criticize Scholes as a pundit, but that doesn't change what he did as a footballer, and it doesn't change what any of these guys did as footballers.
Yeah, fantastic points. I'm going to bring you in quickly, Joe. Look, what I have an issue with, and Pauly's spot on, I completely agree, and that's you should be judged even as if you are a manager as well. You should be judged as a manager, not a player, what you've done in the past. But when we actually break down what Paul Scholes has actually said, the word conned, we're 3 games into the season, mate. Relax. He just smacked 20 goals and 12 assists last season. Like, you can say, I don't think he's the right striker for Man United. I might prefer Haaland. You can say that Martial hasn't played well. Why does he have to say conned? And you got to be careful with the way that you use things, because he's opened himself up now to a barrage of hate from Martial FC, which I think is pathetic, but I'm old, so,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's no excuse for a guy like him to get hate. I mean, what I will say is the people on Twitter who are doing a lot of this hate, how many of them actually remember prime Paul Scholes? That's probably the issue as well. We're looking at an age group here where, well, you'd like to think an age group, considering the things that are being said, that probably don't remember what Paul Scholes really means to Manchester United, or actually just how good he was. But in terms of, Paul Scholes' comments, I mean, sometimes I just feel like some of these old players are out for a soundbite, to be fair, anything for a soundbite. They want to have something that catches, the imagination and something that's going to be run with, and they almost do it to provoke, a reaction almost, because I think they're frustrated. They're frustrated because they're like us. They're not seeing the Manchester United of old. They want to see the Manchester United that they're used to. They're a little bit like us. They're a little bit sort of, they've seen nothing but success, and now that the team's struggling, I think that they struggle to deal with that like we do as fans. And obviously, they have a platform to voice their opinions. But I mean, on Martial, you can say what you want about obviously his ability to be our striker or a number 9 for us. I mean, obviously, Paul's played alongside some great strikers, and obviously Martial probably doesn't hold up against a lot of them. But off the back of what he's just done last season, the timing just seems to be all wrong, to be fair. Like you say, his output of goals and assists was brilliant last year. We're 3 games into this season. And yes, Martial's not been great, but what I'll also say is the rest of the team's not been great as well. Yeah. And there's been a lot of games and moments in games that I've seen this season where he's just been starved of service. And as much as he's, you could argue, well, he should be creating more for himself. I think, he's always going to struggle if the players around him aren't playing as well.
Yeah, well said. Ciaran, I'm going to come to you regarding Martial. I do want to say, do you think he's the right striker for Ollie? Because I think that's kind of where the comments have come from.
Yeah.
If you actually break them down properly.
Yeah, this is what I was thinking as the lads were talking there. Yes, I think the word, like you said, the word con is probably a little bit too far. But again, to me, it's semantics. The message to go across is that he's not the style of striker that, one, I think Scholes is used to seeing at United from his successful years. And two, I think, look, he probably talks to Ollie. They've been teammates. So it was fairly obvious who Ollie's ideal striker was, and it wasn't done by the club. And for me, I don't think Martial is the type of striker that he wants to bring in. You'll probably see it, especially any of the games he doesn't play, if they have the likes of Cavani or if they play Greenwood or something. Like, you have to remember when Ollie first came in, who played striker? Rashford, because he saw him as a more ideal striker. The only difference was that he wanted to be able to fit both him and Martial into the team because they were 2 of his best attacking options. So for me, I don't think Martial is kind of the ideal striker. I've always said it. I think for me, I prefer seeing him on the wing, but the problem is you don't get the best out of both him and Rashford when that happens. So I think it's a difficult one for any manager to kind of sort out because it's just one of those where you have to try and get the best out of both of them.
Mark, I'm going to come to you. Final word on this before we move on. Who's in the wrong? Paul Scholes or the whole of football Twitter? I mean, Hedy has a really great comment here. Thank you very much for your comment. Nice to see you here. To stay current, that's probably why Scholes said it. Unnecessary comment nonetheless. Who's in the wrong here? Is it football Twitter for reacting to it, or is it Paul Scholes for saying that he conned everyone? I just can't. It makes me so angry because I find too many old players are way too negative, but they're negative on the players. But hello, the manager doesn't get as much stick from. I know that's another conversation for another time, but the manager.
They're all grumpy because they're all like, well, back in my day. And it's like, all right, like, get it. Like, players are going to become better than you. Like, that's just the way it is. The game evolves.
What do you reckon, Mark? That's a good point, actually, Pauly.
I think everyone really is in the wrong. I think to say conned, as you've already said, is an awful word to use. Only back in August he was saying I was wrong about Anthony Martial. He's been phenomenal. I don't agree with Ciaran in the fact that he's better on the wing, and the reason why is because both times he's been number 9, both before Mourinho and after Mourinho, he's been amazing. I'm not saying he's an out-and-out striker, and it's only fitting really that he's now saying what he's saying because Cavani's come in. Obviously he's a renowned world-class striker, so now that he's turned up and is now able to be our number 9 prolific striker, we hope, it's very easy to then sort of cast Martial aside. I think pundits have to be very, very careful because if you say too many contradictory things, it's going to come and bite you on the arse. And I think that Scholes has done that many times. He's a wonderful player. People don't appreciate that enough. I see so many things on Twitter. So many things on Twitter that just completely disregard what he was as a player. He was.
They don't remember him, Mark. They don't remember
probably. He was still in their dad's ball sack when he was playing.
Yeah,
that's the reality of it.
Exactly. They're all at least probably only about 8 years old, a lot of these people. So, but what I'm saying is he was phenomenal, and I do get very angry about that sort of thing. However, I do not rate him as a pundit at all, and I think there have been many occasions now, like other people, like Paul Ince. He's another prime one where he seems to jump on people's backs, and he gets so much wrong. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to pause for a moment. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that a second and just say, look, you could look at the timing of this and think, look, we've just brought Cavani in. Is it a tactic to sort of put pressure on Ollie a little bit and the club to say, look, Cavani's got to be a man? But then again, in the same interview, I saw him talking about Cavani, and he's not exactly eulogising about that signing either. I think he said if it was made about 4, 5, 6 years ago, then he'd be excited about that. He'd say he's a player that can take up to the next level. So, if it was a case of him saying this because he's seen another striker come into the club now, and he's basically trying to give Solskjaer a nudge and say, look, this man needs to be a number 9. But I did mention this in the group chat a couple of weeks ago. If Cavani does hit the ground running, playing as a number 9, for example, if he does get a couple of games in the next few weeks, and he does do quite well, it will be interesting to see what Ollie did, because we saw with Jose when he brought Ibrahimovic in, he wasn't afraid to, make him regular towards the end as the regular number 9. So I don't know whether his age will come into it. Cavani starts scoring goals and showing what he wants from a number 9, then it'll be really interesting what Ollie does.
It's about doing what you want from a number 9, and fundamentally, whether you're 20, 25, 30, 35, if you're banging in goals every week, giving another dimension and scoring goals, and that's what everyone should be doing. Martial should be doing the same thing. I know he's had a very quiet couple of weeks, but anyone that's playing in that front three should be doing as much as they can to score goals week in, week out.
If you watch how they play, though, you could see that he wants Martial to kind of play a lot like Roberto Firmino. And so it's not the traditional number 9. Now, it works for Firmino, who doesn't score a lot of goals, but it works for Liverpool because they have Mane and Salah on the sides. United have Rashford and what on the right. And, neither Rashford nor Greenwood or James or whatever are anywhere as close to as consistent as Salah or Mane.
Can I be honest? I know who I'd rather have in my team, Martial over Firmino.
Yeah, Martial would score way more goals.
If it's a new way of playing a striker, I do not want a defensive striker in my team.
That's the kind of striker that Solskjaer wanted, but you do also want a Cavani type striker who maybe can play somewhat like that, but also gives you something else so that, if it's not working in a particular game or whatever, it gives you a different option. So that becomes look, to answer your question, Joe, if Cavani hits the ground running and he's scoring game after game after game, that's a great problem to have.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it will be interesting to see whether he still sees Martial as his main man as number 9, if you know what I mean, or whether he'll be willing to take that plunge of replacing someone like Martial with a 33-year-old and all the backlash it'll get from Martial FC. Obviously, this is what I'm saying. It'll just be interesting whether he's brave enough to stick with it.
Guys, I'm going to let Ciaran say the final word, then we've got to move on. Ciaran.
Yeah, just to go back on kind of my comment, it's not the fact that he should just be playing out in the wing. The fact is, I don't think he's the style of striker that Solskjaer wants, and it's obvious. Pauly says that he plays a little bit like what Firmino does, but then when you saw the likes of Greenwood playing the smaller games last year, that wasn't the way Solskjaer wanted Greenwood to play. So for me, I think he's the best option we have at the club right now, but he's not the preferred option if Solskjaer had his choice. And for me, that's the issue. And Scholes obviously knows that because, again, they've been teammates. They're probably friends outside of football. So he's not just making up these claims out of nowhere. He probably does know kind of some back channels and what Solskjaer probably wants. And
we all know who he wanted. It was Haaland.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, guys, we've got to move on. I'm going to start with you, Pauly, on this. We're going to talk about Henry Winter's comments about the Glazers. I can't lie. I think I'm now in the Henry Winter fan club, to be honest. He's elevated himself right to the top of the tree of my favorite journalists. Sorry to the ones that have been on this show. I still like you as well. But anyway, as I was saying, this is what he wrote. I'm going to read it out because I didn't manage to memorize it. But he says, "You're not fit to spend a second in the distinguished company of Sir Alex Ferguson and Sir Bobby Charlton, legends who have given so selflessly to the club and sport. We know your game, Joel. Your game is simple, fistful of dollars. Fair enough. Money's your business, turning sport into business into dollars." Pauly, I'm going to start with you here. What's refreshing is to actually see a mainstream, well-renowned, and probably very well-respected journalist such as Henry Winter from the Times, it's not the Sun or someone like that, just turn around and say exactly how it is. we as fans scream and shout all the time about this, and it seems that the mainstream media don't really address this, or they don't really divulge this as much as they should do. But I saw Julian Laurence do it fantastically well on the podcast he does with Gab Marcotti, and I've seen Henry do it. What do you make of these comments? Because is it now perhaps we're seeing a bit of a change in the tide turning with the way journalists are going to be reporting about the Glazers?
He's absolutely right. And you're right that we don't see journalists do it. But I think that's because it's always been a Manchester United issue. And now these guys aren't going to be in control. These guys aren't trying to take control of Manchester United. They're trying to take control of English football. And that's when everybody is starting to be like, whoa, we can't have that. But he's right. But like the reality is, this didn't come about, this project Big Picture didn't come about like in the last 3 weeks. It's been coming about in the last 3 years. This is what they want to do, and they've been trying to do it, and they're angling, and they probably used COVID as a great opportunity to push it through, to be like, hey, we'll support the EFL clubs because they need it right now, and it's a great opportunity to push it through. But this is what they've been angling for quite some time. And that the God honest truth is, I know people don't want to hear this, but football is not the game of the people anymore. It stopped being that the second that people could make a lot of money off of it. The one thing that every billionaire in the world has in common is their desire to make money and make more money. And when they see an opportunity to make money, they will go and snatch that up to make more. Like Instagram got bought by Facebook because Facebook saw an opportunity there that we'll spend a lot of money on Instagram, but we'll make a lot more in the long term. And these investors have seen the chance to get into English football and that they can monetize it. And it belongs to them now. I know we want to think like this is our club and everything, but they bought it. When we turned it into shareholders and they bought the majority of the shares, it became theirs. If we had the Spanish system, it'd be a different story, but we don't. It's a capitalist system, and now you have capitalist people coming in and trying to get all the money for it.
I don't think. Yeah, look, I don't. I'm going to come to Ciaran for this. I'm just going to touch on you two because we've got a lot to talk about, and then the next topic I'll go to Marc and Joe. But Ciaran, I don't think fans have an issue that a rich businessman is going to take over. It's about what their intentions are, and it's about what I know. This is exactly what Pauly's saying, but that's how I also see it. That right, their club, fine, whatever. But if they were actually running it like a proper football club, because you can still do two and two together, right? The more United are successful on the pitch, you can still make as much money off the pitch as if they're not. And that's the problem, isn't it? That people are now looking through. I mean, this summer particularly is one which stands out to me. It's so obvious what's happening. I know fans should have been seeing this for the past 7 years, but now everyone can see it because you know why? Because they're seeing it happen to a club legend. I'm fully aware of that because people didn't like Jose. They're like, oh, Jose signings this and that. That's true as well. But now they're seeing it with Ollie. It's quite clear. It doesn't matter who's at the helm of the club. This is how they're going to act, and they don't care, do they?
No, of course they don't. Look, we've known that if you were paying attention really and didn't, because a lot of us came into the transfer window this year kind of more with our hearts thinking that, okay, the club are going to back the manager, that we did what we are expected to do or we are asked to do last season and they have to move on. But again, you just have to look at the track record of the Glazers and that just doesn't happen. Like we say it's the last 7 years, but you can go through plenty of transfer windows when Sir Alex Ferguson was there. But it's a really weird, I don't know if euphemism is the word, but a phrase that I think Sir Alex was the best deodorant that Man United ever had, because basically the amount of transfers, I just have to go back to the Ronaldo one. You sell Ronaldo for 80 million and you bring in, was it Obertan, Michael Owen?
And Valencia, right? Now, if those teams, even after Ronaldo, were still successful, the main reason for that is due to the manager. And he had a good nucleus of players. If this was any other manager, we'd be stuck in the kind of hellhole we are right now for much longer than 7 years.
yeah, we'd be the difference is we already had built that nucleus of a side, so you only have to kind of pick and choose a couple of extra players to bring in. And when you have a manager that knows what he's doing, that every player that comes in knows how they have to play, and if they don't play that way, they're just going to get sold. We don't have that anymore, and because we don't have that, you're seeing the kind of level that we're at. Under Ferguson, people will say, yes, he spent money. The kind of season with Robin Van Persie when he came in was an example, but we've spent money under the Glazers even after Ferguson. The problem was that Ferguson was able to deal with the windows when they weren't good. Our managers now can't because they don't have the strength and depth in the squad that we had under Ferguson. And it's
or they're just not as good as well, mate.
And it's not going to change until, honestly, and I've said it for a while, that it's going to take a hell of a lot of luck for our fortunes to change. It's going to take a lot of players coming through, like Mason Greenwood, some of these young players that were coming in and buying even into the U team to come through and actually be good players, because that's where the club have put a lot of their resources in the last few years, and that needs to come to fruition. If it doesn't, we're going to be stuck in the cycle that we are for a lot longer than any of us want.
I'll let Joe have a word and then we'll move on. You're on mute.
Sorry, Joe.
That's the only way to shut up, mate. That's the only way to shut up. No, I just want to add to that and say, for me, it's not just about what Fergie did as well, and obviously he did. He, like Ciaran said, he maximised everything he had. But I think the competition's different nowadays as well. And when I say the competition's different, I don't only mean that teams have got better on the pitch. I think you look at the way teams are doing things off the pitch. I mean, obviously, Man City's model since they came in 2008, and especially in the last few years, the way they go about their business is so much better. Liverpool, they've improved their scouting system over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, like no end, and the way that they go about their business off the pitch as well. So I just think, yes, obviously, not taking anything away from Fergie, that everything Ciaran said is absolutely spot on, but I do think the way other teams are doing things now is also better, and they've sort of gone past us as well, if you know what I mean, left us behind.
Completely agree.
It's almost
Joe's right, but it's not just in that regard, but off the pitch. But it's harder to move a player on. Like if you come and you don't play the way that the manager wants you, Ferguson would just be like, right, you're off. He calls up Chelsea, they take Juan Sebastian Veron. You can't do that anymore. Now you need to, you have to call up, they have to go find an agent to broker the deal, and then that agent wants a cut of the money, and suddenly this fee gets outrageous. That first of all, the other teams have analytics departments, so they'll look at the player and they'll be like, well, Veron, Chelsea just looked at him and be like, we saw what you see when he was at whatever club we got him from, he was good, and and he was good in Europe, but he just doesn't fit with your team, he'll fit with ours. Now they have an analytics department that goes, well, no, United should have seen this, that his numbers actually aren't that great, they shouldn't have signed him in the first place. So we're not going to sign him. Or they said he's not worth that much, and you have to find an agent to broker the deal, and the agent wants a cut of the deal, and the fee starts spiraling out of hand. The wages are already high, and the team goes, you know what? It's not worth spending all this money to sign you, and thus you can't move the player on.
Yeah, I guess.
Let Marc have a word, guys.
Marc,
do you want to have a word on the comments? I mean, the guys made some fantastic comments as well, but Henry Winter's comments, I mean, it's what we all know, isn't it?
Just wanted to add to it's like clubs these days use that as a marketing tool in itself, really. Many times over this summer, we've kind of viewed clubs and on how well they're ran, and I think clubs pride themselves in that. And when as Joe's mentioned recently, Man City and Liverpool obviously in the last 5 years have really increased their analytical skills and their scouting. Man City has really set a trend since 2008, and it's almost as though clubs pride themselves in that structure, and they want to, it's another way for them to flaunt the muscles, essentially, isn't it? They want to, that's a good marketing tool. Look at this club, they're ran incredibly well. It would probably bump up the price of their value and all of that sort of thing. Back to Henry and his comments, I think it's brilliant. that he's made those comments. I don't think it means it's going to change anything. And I think we've said many times over the summer, Fabrizio has always said he loves talking about United because it gets so much attention. Now, if we've got massive people from the Times that are coming in and saying these things, then it's gonna look bad on the Glazers, and maybe that could tilt it slightly. I'm not saying that it's gonna mean, oh crap, we need to go and sell up. But if you get more and more people that are seeing exactly what's going on, we're not all stupid. We know what's going on. We've seen it. We've seen the numbers. And if you get more people like that,
Mark, there are some fans that are just waking up as if they've been in a cocoon or whatever, hibernating for 7 years. Like, this has been going on for years. Like, some fans still are saying, well, the Glazers spent money. I don't want to go too much into this, but
then they need to take their heads out of the sand.
Yeah. That's a great way. That's a great way to say it. We don't want to talk too much about the Glazers today to all the listeners. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're going to talk about Bruno Fernandes today. I'm going to come to you first, Ciaran. Remember, you're on mute, so when you do start talking, take yourself off mute. But look, a lot of comments coming out today. Myself and Pauly had we spoke about it on Twitter today. My view on Bruno Fernandes is that this is completely another PR sort of spin. It reminds me very much of the Pogba versus Mourinho, the whole Pogba being the virus. And now you're seeing stories about Bruno. What have you got to say about it? It's so expected, isn't it, from the club?
Yeah, look, you just have to look at where the stories are coming from. So again, I think I've seen a couple of people were saying that it was coming from Portugal. Then you look into it deeper and it's coming from the likes of Duncan Castles, and it's something that doesn't surprise me because, again, he's not exactly, let's say, Ollie's favorite, or he's not a fan of the manager, and we all know his relationship with Jose Mourinho. I think it's very obvious, and it's come out pretty much. I think it was on Fabrizio Romano's podcast today that he completely denied that there's been any issues. And look, Fabrizio Romano is close to a lot of players' agents. That's probably come from Bruno's agent. And I think it's obvious that Bruno doesn't seem like that type of person. He may say something in the heat of the moment during a game, but when you see him after a game, he's a completely different person. You just have to go back to the semi-final against Sevilla, where he was screaming at Lindelof towards the end of the game. And then he's being interviewed 10 to 15 minutes later, and he's calm, cool, and collected about the whole situation. And it's just not a big deal for it outside of the pitch for him. But when he's on the pitch, you see that kind of fire. But he doesn't appear to be that. He doesn't appear to have that personality off the pitch. So even hearing those, I doubted it, and especially when you heard the other stories that were coming out that he kind of yelled at Maguire at halftime, and that's the reason he got. So I think it's just someone just trying to make up more stories to try and make sure that there's a divide in the camp, because it just seems the timing is very peculiar when it kind of comes about.
Well, the thing is, right, we have got. I mean, we're not going to talk about Pochettino and Ollie because I just don't want to talk about it today. But we have got one person, Pauly, sitting there, which all this rubbish comes from. We all know exactly who he is, Ed Woodward. We've seen the way he operates when he got Louis van Gaal out. We've seen the way he operates with Jose Mourinho, gave him a new contract, then got him out. We've seen the way that, Ollie's been let down. And now, so suddenly, when things are going much more difficultly like they are at the moment, we've had a bad start season. Immediately, the spotlight and the anger shifted from the owners and Woodward, and fans are that silly that they absolutely lap it up. They've lapped every single story that's come up. Obviously, there's some people that haven't, but we know exactly what Woodward's trying to do here. Whether you want Pochettino or not is another argument, but the PR machine is spinning. And what people are doing now, as Abdul says here, we know is, Duncan Castles, he hates Ollie. We've seen every single thing he says is negative about him. And Neil Ashton, Neil Ashton is really earning his dough right now, isn't he, Pauly?
Yeah, he's been a great signing for Woodward.
Yeah, exactly. And look how what's happened. We look at, I just can't even look. I will say that Ollie has to save his job now. That's how I feel. And I think Pochettino will be a good signing. I'm going to go out and say that. But the fact that people genuinely are thinking that, if we get a new manager, we're going to go and basically win the league, everything's going to be fine. It's so stupid. Like, I don't know what else to say to that.
They're creating, you're spot on. And they're creating this weird, they're like trying to create a situation where they can come out on top. That's exactly what they did, right after the transfer window closed and we had just lost 6-1 and they leaked that story about we've spoken to Pochettino. And that's, because now the fans can go and get, they should be firing Ollie and signing Pochettino. And look, there are legitimate questions to ask about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer right now. But the narrative took off with, suddenly everything that he had ever achieved was forgotten about. It was, he relegated Cardiff. He shouldn't be the manager here. And it's like, that's, you're being ridiculous now. But then they also leaked that story of Bruno tearing into the team at halftime. And that's why he was subbed off and yelling at Maguire and telling him he's not fit to earn the shirt. And what happens? The fan base, because they know how much they love Bruno, the fan base reacts like, Bruno, like, kiss the ground he walks on, he should be captain, which, by the way, that is the most uncaptain thing you could do. You cannot tell Harry Maguire he's unfit to wear the shirt. This is the guy who played every single goddamn minute for this club last year.
What about Roy Keane and the things he used to say, though?
Exactly.
Players are different.
What Maguire has done, you can 100% tell Harry Maguire to get his head out of his ass and say, you're playing like crap today, and hey, focus, we need you. And Maguire should in turn then look at Bruno and say, you need to get your head out of your ass too, because you're also playing like crap, and that'll create a row. And
Roy Keane can say that because Roy Keane has the trophies and the winning acumen to back that up. Not one of those players, not even Pogba, who's won the World Cup, not one of those players in that dressing room can say anything to each other because none of them are good enough. None of them are at that level. No, I know they're good enough. None of them are at that level to say that.
You can't go to the guy who is credited with bringing this team together and also who played every minute of the season for us last year and tell him he's not fit to wear the shirt. You can't do that. But of course, how did it's
a fake news story, by the way.
But also think about this. Like, how did he react? Ciaran, you've said this. Haider, you've said this. When it comes to Solskjaer, like, you always have to judge his actions, not his words. When Bruno blew up at Lindelof, his words are, as every manager is, I want to see my players do that because it's the heat of the game and that happens. But if it actually was a true story and Solskjaer subbed Bruno out, that means Bruno is probably out of line. But the fan base reacts, they back Bruno. So then this week, it's the same story, but it's slightly different now. Maguire's not really mentioned by name. It's just all the players. And, he took on Ollie's tactics, Ollie got it wrong. But you're a player. You can't yell at your manager like that. But again, the fan base is backing Bruno, just like you said, the way the fan base backed Pogba in this situation, which wasn't the club making it. That was Mourinho's doing. The club is doing it now so that if they have to make a move, it'll be, they're going to try to appease a lot of sections. They're going to try to make this Bruno versus Ollie so that if they make a move, it'll be the popular decision. But let's just, if it was Paul Pogba who was the center of this story, how would you be reacting?
Let me just bring Mark into this, and I'll bring Joe in, and we've got to move on. Fantastic points. But Mark, me being the cynic, right? And I'm going to be the cynic. If Ollie gets sacked, Poch comes in, has a great run, then this happens again. This is a way for the board to turn around and say, Bruno's the one that started this, so let's throw Bruno under the bus because Pogba's been thrown under the bus, hasn't he? Pogba was the one that went against Jose. The fans loved it. Now Pogba's the virus. This is a problem that our own club, chucking everyone under the bus, our own club is creating stories and stirring the fans up. And the fans they're just not being aware enough to see what's going on.
So that was going to be my first question. I've been very busy this week, so I've only sort of caught the tail end of it. But is this definitely something that the club have thrown out there, or is this something that is completely rubbish? Because
everybody is like everybody's on Bruno's side has said this is rubbish.
Yeah, well, I was going to say about him earlier. He comes across, obviously, a very passionate man on the pitch. And that's what you want in a player. But I think, as Ciaran said, in interviews and any other time and some, readings that I've looked at, he's actually quite an introverted person off the field. So I can't imagine that happens. Now, why you would want to create an environment like that, it puts some extreme pressure on Ollie, puts some extreme pressure on Bruno. That's going to affect him. He's one of our best players, if not the best. Yeah, and we've all been raving about him since January. You don't want to do that. And if that doesn't go to show you, if United and Ed and his puppets are
merry little men,
are coming out with this, then that, if that doesn't show you just how much they give a shit about the club, I don't know what will. Because that's awful. You can't do that. You don't want to be playing people off each other. You just let them get on with it. Just let them get on with it. And again, this is where I said to you earlier, bad news is there's no such thing as bad news. And if they are prepared to do that, it's only going to create them clicks and attention. And United is the only club that you can do that with. I don't ever see anything about any other clubs where they lay into a player, they lay into a manager, they lay into the club, into the transfer. Do you know what I mean? So I just think it's all wrong. And if that doesn't prove a point, then I don't know what will.
Joe, I'm going to bring you in here before we move on to the next, because we've got some big stuff to talk about after this. We haven't got too much time. But look, we have a look at the situation that Ollie is under pressure now. Some people have one view, some people have another view. You're completely entitled to your view, and no one should be put down for that. But the point is, this is basically like pouring gasoline on the fire, isn't it? Completely now. This whole situation against Ollie, because a lot of people, a lot of fans, I love Bruno. And some people will use that as a way to basically create more of their agenda against the manager, because it's a tough situation right now, isn't it, as a United fan?
Yeah, look, it's a tough one as well, because touching on what Pauly said there about, they're doing this thing where it's Ollie or Bruno and it's a popularity contest, and that's why they're probably targeting Bruno. But let's not forget, Ollie's a real popular guy at the club as well, but it's probably not Ollie the manager, more Ollie the player, obviously. I think, obviously, his popularity as a manager may not be the same across sections of our fan base. But no, I just think it's one of them things, isn't it? I mean, can't people see it? I mean, when we were doing so well last year and we were getting towards the top four, we were in the middle of one of those great runs. There was loads of leaks from the club and in the media saying the atmosphere's never been better around Carrington. The way Solskjaer addresses people around Carrington, the way he deals with staff, everything absolutely brilliant. And then I saw a story after the first defeat of the season where apparently Ollie's changed something at Carrington now that has upset staff. I think it's something to do with car parking or something, wasn't it? Like, it's changed the name.
Slow news day, Joe.
Like non-important or whatever, or non-essential staff or something. But this is what I mean. Like, we hear all these all the time. Like, when it's going really well, there's such a good feel-good factor around Old Trafford and Carrington. When it's going bad, we get these stories, and it's just like people latch onto them all the time, and you look at it and you think, can't you see, guys? It's just part of the game, It's just all one big game to this club.
It's all blown out of proportion.
Mark's absolutely spot on. Like, United's the only club you really see this happen at. I mean, you can't tell me that all of the 19 clubs are functioning brilliantly within the dressing room, around the training ground. It's impossible. I mean, Liverpool, haggling over 5 million here or there for Thiago in the summer, but they weren't criticised like we were criticised for going after Sancho and arguing over that fee. But no one had really made anything of what Liverpool were doing with Thiago. They made an absolute dog's dinner out of that deal. You know what I mean?
Someone's hungry.
We're talking like dinner, you see. So I'm thinking meal. Yeah. They made that, but that didn't get the traction that United's pursued.
It's Man United, Joe. Journalists have come on to this show and have openly said to me when I interviewed them, Man United gets clicks. People put Man United's name in because it will get them more clicks.
It'll get your client more money.
Yeah, and that's genuinely the thing. Ciaran, I'm going to let you say one more final word on this before we move on. By the way, Pauly, that glow on your face. Whoa.
Yeah, you are watching like the sun. There is one spot in my windows that is not covered by blinds.
Are
and
you
the sun
sure?
has moved.
It's illegal to be that good
Are
looking,
you
mate.
sure? Are you sure it's not a halo?
Yeah, no.
I
In
think
like
it's
20
God,
minutes,
mate,
you will
it's
see
off.
like
Come
my
on,
face will
Jesus.
be dark again.
I think it's God telling us that he's the right one on the show. I think he's just the one today, so they're just shining the light on him, if you know what I mean. This guy is the voice of reason today.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, Ciaran, give us your final thoughts on that before we move on to some of the big picture stuff.
Yeah, look, my final thoughts, especially as a fan base, is if you think getting rid of Ollie's going to change anything at this football club, it's not, because the same people above him is going to do the exact same thing. The whole reason why bringing in Ollie actually kind of gave us a little bit of release when he came in was because people were actually happy around the club. We actually enjoyed the people that worked for it, especially after Jose was in, because everything was negative that was coming out. And now people are turning on Ollie because at the end of the day, people get bored, and that's the problem. If we brought in Pochettino and similar results happened, he had success the first season, it was kind of hard the second season, the same thing would happen. They'd want for somebody else. If we brought in Nagelsmann 2 years and then they want somebody else, that's the problem with, I think, a lot of modern or younger fans right now, because they see it on. The problem is, we mentioned it before, Haider, is like a lot of the younger fans now are just kind of the FIFA gamers, where they expect everything to change all the time. They expect transfers to go through instantly. That's not the way it works. If we get rid of Ollie, some of the strides that we made forward, we may actually be taking 2 steps back off the field.
And everybody says, Poch would get so much more out of this squad. And
I think he would.
I happen to believe he would hit the ground running and get a lot out of this squad. But if he didn't, if he struggles at first, you watch how quickly those goalposts will move, and people will say, "Oh, he needs to settle in. He needs to bring his own players in." And
then they'll turn on him.
Exactly.
Well,
You're buying the Woodward. You're doing you are sheep to Ed Woodward. You're doing exactly what he wants you to do. He is trying to distract you that he has failed over and over again for 7 years, and he's deflecting the blame, and it's working.
Well, I'm going to bring Joe into this quickly, then I'll have the final word. Go on, Joe.
Yeah, sorry, Haider. I just want to say quick, you'll probably like this, mate, because it's going to go along with you. And I don't normally agree with you when it comes to Ollie and Poch, but the only hope I would have if Poch did come in is that, from what we hear, ever since Woodward got this job, he has been his dream date. He's been the one he wants to take out for dinner, drinks. He's the one that he really wants. So the only hope we do have is if Poch did come in, we would see a change in behaviour in the transfer window. If it didn't happen with Poch, I would be really worried, because I just don't know what other manager he would back. If he ain't backing Poch after a couple of seasons, he ain't backing anybody, in my opinion.
What I will say,
until they argue.
Huh?
Until they start arguing, and then the whole relationship just crumbles down.
Yeah, I mean, look, what I will say though is that final thing on this, guys, because we've got 17 minutes and we've got to talk about 3 more things. But what I will say on this is that Pochettino, if you look at the squad, we've seen managers come in, obviously. As Abdul says here, Josie was dream date as well. That's exactly what Pauly just said as well. But when I look at the managers that come in, Moyes, certain style, Van Gaal, possession based, Jose, the low block, playing on the counter. Each of the time it was chop and change. Whereas you could probably see more of a continuity, more of a continuation from the way that Ollie's playing to the way Pochettino would want to play. I know they're not exactly the same, but there's more of a continuation. It's not jumping from one extreme to another. What I will say on this, though, is that it's quite clear what the board are doing. It's quite clear what Woodward are doing, and it's pissing me off because people are stupid and they're falling for it. That's the first thing. But the second thing as well, when you look at Ollie, he needs to perform. It's a really, really big next 2 or 3 games for him. Whatever you say, whatever's going on behind the scenes, you can't be losing your first 4 or 5 games. That's just the reality of it. And if you lose it, you lose your job. Anyway, I'm going to come to you, Mark. We're just going to touch on this, actually. And everyone's going to go. I'm just going to go around quickly with everyone. PPV, Mark, United are playing on the weekend. Are you going to go and spend 14.95 to watch United play? What an absolute joke, mate.
Absolutely not. Now, I might get shot because I am supposed to be a United fan that pays the money to watch my club. Now, the way that I feel is, we already spend, I don't know what it is, about 80 quid and some to be able to watch every live game. And to add £15 onto that for every game is absolutely disgusting. And to be honest with you, if you are a fan that isn't in agreement with Ed Woodward and the Glazers, why the hell would you spend an extra 15 quid in order to watch them? That's what I feel.
Well said. Joe, I'm going to come to you before we talk about Project Big Picture. PPV, they are saying that this money is going to go to the clubs. If you're taking money out of people like us, I haven't worked since March, but I was furloughed till July, right? My money situation is a mess right now. Today I had to do a spreadsheet, and I wish I hadn't done it because it gives you full clarity on how fucked I am. I just swore. I don't know why I did. But anyway, what I will say is, yes, everyone's struggling in this, but you're taking money out of people that have no money. Like, I can't, mate, Total Sportex is going to get absolutely abused in my house. So, yeah, talk to me about your thoughts quickly.
You're on mute, mate. He's turning into Mark, isn't he? He's turning into me.
I have a real first line there as well. I was just about to say, if anyone's offended by what they've just heard, I do apologise. But, you know, we can't help the sounds that we're getting from elsewhere. Now, I just think it's a little bit like MUTV, and that, you know, if people are cancelling their subscription or are not going to pay for MUTV, then I don't see what difference this is going to make. I mean, I've always questioned this in England about 3 o'clock games being available anyway. I know what they're trying to say. They're trying to say you can't make 3 o'clock kickoffs available over here because it'll prevent people actually going to games and things like that. You know, they might decrease, you know, stadium, you know, attendances. And I kind of get that. But, you know, what we had after the lockdown and when we restarted, when they were showing literally every game, it was really cool, like, you know, and it's not like this is something that's got to go on forever. You know, we're hoping we were hoping obviously by now we'd have fans back, but surely by next season we could, you know, if we look at next season's start date, which will probably be back in August again, it's not too radical to expect that we could have fans back in the stadium by then. So we're just expecting them to sort of stand to this cost or whatever they've got to charge us, you know, till August, and then obviously once we get there, then everything will go back to normal, and people will have that choice whether they go to games or watch it on TV. And I think moving forward now as well, this could be something that stays in terms of pay-per-view on all kickoff, because I do think there's going to be a lot of people that have been scarred mentally by this virus for years to come, and even when this is all over, they may no longer feel so comfortable being sat in a packed stadium. You know what I mean? With the risk of anything spreading. So I yes, the virus might go away, but people's mindsets might not change. So maybe it's something for down the line. But I think for this season, they should just left it how it was. And, you know, people have paid so much money to Sky and football clubs over the years. You know, all we're asking for is a season's worth of games, to be honest.
What I will say, last thing on this, guys, is that having not worked for a long time, you know, I really do look forward to the weekends where I can watch football, and I watch every single team. I know there's some donuts out there that don't think you should watch Liverpool versus Leeds, because you're a top red. Go and shove that up your ass. So what I will say is that being able to watch
feisty today,
mate, it's just because
what you've been drinking today.
Are you sure you're not? Are you sure it's not that you're just annoyed that? Are you sure you're not just annoyed that Maguire got sent off for England?
You know what? Like you said in the comments, it's going to be reacting unrationally. No, you know what it is? I'm hangry. Like, I haven't eaten anything all day, so I'm just waiting for my dinner after. No, I'm kidding. But no, what I will say...
to Deliveroo before this, then, while you're like, that's what it was.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It wasn't my missus. So what I will say, though, is that the football's been amazing to be able to watch every single game, and, you know, to take that away from people, I'm not saying, like, it sounds so dramatic, but, you know, I really did enjoy sitting and spending the whole weekend. We can't do anything otherwise, can we? You know, and so it was disgusting. Nice. Yeah, it is. But look, guys, now this is the one I want to talk about, and this is the big topic for today. Not having a go at anyone, but I haven't seen it anywhere where anyone's actually broken down Project Big Picture properly and actually gone through each one. So that's what we're going to do today. Maybe you have, Joe, but you didn't share it with the rest of the world.
No, I'm looking at the guy in the top right-hand corner, mate.
Right. I thought you were saying you done it. Okay, so
no.
Guys,
isn't it off the table now, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is off the table. Well, it's gonna get reproposed and etc. But I want Ciaran. Ciaran's done some fantastic research. Ciaran, break down all the elements of project big picture, and then we'll have a little bit of a discussion about it.
Yeah, look, there's different aspects of it. The kind of press that United and Liverpool are getting is that they're money hungry and they want to control everything in the Premier League, which, granted, yeah, that's kind
They
of
are.
that's what they want to do, guys. But
They're not.
You have to think that there's other aspects of this that actually make sense. So yes, while they want to be able to control basically everything that comes in, I personally think they want a TV deal that happens in the Premier League. They can make it that it's going to make sense for them. And also, if I was reading that if like a new owner came in, that they could basically be the ones to reject it or accept it. So that's something that makes sense. But the other side of this that I think is a lot of people are forgetting because they want to blast Liverpool and United is the actual benefits that this would have had for a lot of the EFL clubs. There's a lot of EFL clubs that are in serious trouble right now. There was reports that have come out that 5 to 6 championship teams are basically on the brink, where there's a lot of championship teams that spend more on players' wages than they actually have for money coming in. And this would have actually provided them to be able to kind of stay. It would have meant that any future deal that the EFL clubs would have got 25% of that, which would basically be able to change the structure of kind of the league football for a lot of the lower divisions. Now, the problem is more of the fans go towards the Premier League, but you have to remember where a lot of these clubs came from. And you have to be able to support the overall English football. You can't just be looking at the elites. So while there are some really bad parts of it where obviously the top clubs want to be able to control everything, some of the parts that have come out of it is something that's good. That, and why, from what you said, Haider, that I think will happen is there will be other versions of this, because it's something that has to happen, because really the government has done nothing. They haven't tried to help these clubs. They've promised National League teams that they're going to bail them out. They still haven't done it. So the issue I have is, while we are all in Liverpool, at least they're actually trying to do something. There's so many other clubs that are just happy to go along with it, especially Premier League, because they're making money. But they have to remember, a lot of these kind of smaller clubs were in the Championship just a couple of years ago, and they would be struggling big time right now. So that's something that you need to take into account. I don't agree with there was a loan aspect where basically the big clubs would be able to bring in as many kind of players and loan them out around the world, which is kind of what we saw Chelsea do for a while, and they actually got penalised for it. So that's one of the kind of key elements. The other thing that you have to think of is, if the Premier League want to kind of push the kind of American angle and get into the States and be one of the main kind of sports, that's the reason I think you're seeing kind of some of the proposals for the restructure. They want to make the Premier League more entertaining. And for us, we love it. But for a lot of Americans, I hear it all the time, is where some of them say that games. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to spice it up a little bit. So have more playoffs, have
it's not
less
broken
teams.
though, Ciaran.
It's not, but what I'm saying is they're doing this because they want to make more money. The more money that TV advertisers can give them, and that's the whole point. They're just trying to make it a bit more entertaining. Look, there's many parts of this that I completely agree with, and then there's other parts that is disgusting.
Tell me 3 things you agree with and 3 things you disagree with.
The main thing that I agree with is that the money that's to be given to the EFL clubs, and that they should be part of any TV deal that the Premier League take part in, because that's something that needs to happen. The other thing I agree with is getting rid of the Community Shield, getting rid of the EFL trophy, because at the end of the day, the big teams don't care, and it doesn't for the EFL clubs anyway, so it's not really beneficial for them. So those are kind of the 2 main ones. The parts I don't like is the fact that they would be going away from the 1 vote per club in the Premier League, because it's not a fair system. You're basically having the top 6 clubs plus 2 or 3 others like West Ham, Southampton, being able to control everything, and I don't think that's not good. When other you need to have kind of checks and balances in the Premier League because of the amount of money that's involved. So for me, those are kind of the main negatives and main positives in relation to kind of what we've been hearing over the past week.
Mark, I'm going to come to you because you had your hand up like a good, well-behaved
student.
person.
Student.
I was going to say boy, but it would have sounded weird, so I just said boy. I didn't want it to make it something that it's not, because Mark gets easily, seduced. So, anyway, go on. Tell me your thoughts, because I think Ciaran broke
you that. Who told you that?
Secret.
I'll be having a word.
The missus, no. Look, it's look, Ciaran broke that down fantastically well, Ciaran. So thank you very much for that. When we look at it, you've got to look at the intentions, right?
Yeah. Listen, I don't think anyone is going to go in, especially we've seen it with American owners, and this is no disrespect to Americans, Pauly, but we know how they work, and they're not going to go in thinking, right, okay, here we go, we're gonna provide this nice thing for lower level clubs to make it sound better for what we're trying to do. Yeah,
let's say something quickly. Everyone thinks like Pauly loves the Glazers, and it's so funny. To be fair, that was Pauly. When I first met Pauly, I was like, they planted him because he's American. But the thing is, though, is that people just think. I think my brother said this to me when we first met Pauly. He's like, Pauly likes him, doesn't he? I'm like, why? Because he's American. I'm like, maybe, I don't know.
Pauly's a mouthpiece for the Glazers, man. That's what.
Yeah, exactly.
For the Glazers.
I will just say nothing that Mark just said was offensive.
Okay, good. Go on, Mark. Sorry, I cut you off. I just found that so funny.
All right, that's fine. It was. Yeah, I don't think that, it's not a dictatorship, it's a democracy, isn't it? And if they're gonna veer from that, then that wouldn't be fair to have all top 6 clubs having, the highest order. That's not fair. And you're never going to go into a business deal and go, oh, this is what we want. Okay, so they've gone in and they've said, look, this is what we want, which is probably ridiculous. And in return, we will give some money to lower level clubs. They can afford it. So they're never going to, do you know what I mean? They're going to throw in some things that are going to make it sound like a better proposal from their side. Now, to me, I'm sorry, leave it as it is. The Premier League, I appreciate there are clubs that need money and the government isn't doing enough. Absolutely fine. And yes, bigger clubs, the Premier League should be able to help those clubs out. But from an entertainment perspective, it's the most worldly watched league. Yes, things can be improved all the time, but they don't need to do that. There's a reason why it's the best league in the world. They don't need to do that. So I think that there's a lot of points, not that you've made, Ciaran, in particular, but that you've told us about, that I just don't agree with. I don't think anything needs to be changed. Don't fix what doesn't need fixing. And yeah, they're not going to go in all guns blazing and say, this is what we want, give us all the unanimous votes. They're going to say, right, we can give some money to lower level clubs. They can afford to do so.
This goes back to what I said before, though, in that billionaires, they all just want to make more money. They don't like to give money away. Look at FIFA. What is wrong with a 32-team World Cup? Nothing. It is perfect. And they've decided to make it 48 teams with 3-team groups, and it's going to be stupid and whatever. We're all going to watch because of the World Cup, but it sounds ridiculously dumb, but they're going to make more money from it. So you're absolutely right, Mark, in that they are making it, they're putting some things into that proposal that make it sound like this is a good deal for you, but ultimately it's a very good deal for them. They're going to be the ones that benefit from this the most. And maybe it is because I am American, but I kind of like the idea of putting one of the Premier League teams into that playoff spot. That's a pretty good concept, especially because those teams at the bottom of the table, they spend all season there, and we're like, well, they're crap. We kind of forget that they're better than all the other teams in the league. So a
playoffs place for what?
So the third promotion spot will stay as the playoffs, but the last Premier League team, in 2 Premier League teams will be automatically relegated, and then the last one will go into the play. It's kind of like the relegation playoffs in Germany.
Right, I'll just say something. Okay? Let me just say something about this, because I'm sorry, us as United fans, this would actually help us, right? I mean, it makes it easy. It would be something it'd be beneficial for, maybe not as much the club, but mate, I just think it's disgusting. It's just an absolute obvious. It's literally a power grab. That's exactly what it is. It's so blatant. It's literally like wolves in sheep's clothing. I'm trying to get that right, not sheep's and wolves' clothing. It's just ridiculous. And something I saw earlier from Ciaran Maguire, which I'm going to read out. It says many in EFL seem to think that the Project Big Picture is £250 million bailout, followed by 25% of the Premier League TV rights. If you look at the small print, the 250 million is an advance of the money, which will then be subtracted by 25%. So it's it helps them maybe in the short term. In the long term, it's something which is not going to be beneficial. Hold on, Joe, 1 sec. I'll let you have your word. But at the end of the day, how can you allow 9 clubs to be in charge of everything, pretty much, essentially? And how can you allow, I think, look, there's a lot of things wrong with the Premier League, right? There's a lot. It's not a perfect model. It's not a perfect product. But allowing certain clubs to set the rules it's just complete conflict of interest. It's just not right at all. However you look at it, I know, but there's the other element of it that clubs are going to go out of business. We've seen Bury go out. These clubs, and I think people sometimes realize that in a lot of places, a lot of small towns or maybe cities in the UK, like these clubs are the beating heart of the community. Jobs, happiness, especially in the working class areas, joy, togetherness, community. These are really important things for people when life is difficult. It's like back in the day when you went to go and see United and people would work their asses off just so that they can go and watch United on the weekend. They spend all their hard money on that. And that's why when Sir Matt Busby said, it's about entertaining the fans. Football has to be beautiful. It has to give them something to enjoy. And this is just this is a step completely in the other direction. This is just opportunism, greed, just leeches. It makes me so angry. I'm sorry. They've ruined United and now they're going to go and ruin everyone else for their own greed.
No, mate, totally with you. And like you said, we're Man United fans, so the ones out there that are sort of blinded by it might say, "Oh well, it's going to benefit us, so let's roll with it." But what you got to remember is, if the lower leagues die, Manchester United dies eventually. I don't believe that we could, any club can survive without the rest of it. English football and all its parts. It's. If all the clubs keep dying that are outside the top 6, you're going to end up with just 6 teams in England, and then what appeal is the league going to have? So you have to support these other teams and the development of these other teams, and for football to keep evolving. But I just think the problem is that people are looking at this. And looking at, especially the Manchester United side of it, maybe not so much Liverpool, because, to be fair to them, like I've said before, off the field, I feel dirty for saying it. They've done some pretty good things. But the Man United side of it, other fans of other football clubs and other football clubs owners must be looking at this and be like, you can't even run your own football club. So how the hell can you come up with a plan that's going to change English football? You can't revolutionise your own football club.
They can run it as a business.
Yeah,
they are fantastic at it.
Yeah, but that's what we're talking on a football level here, aren't we? I know what. Yeah, and that's everything that's wrong with this idea is that it's all to do with business.
But Joe, that's
what the Premier League has become. Like that's what it is. And I see your point. Like your thing is very idealistic. Of if the lower leagues die, Manchester United will die. But at a certain point, like right around now, like what percentage of United's fans reside in the UK? It's less than it's ever been. Like there's so many fans around the world that like they know that the money is in TV.
That's not the point, though.
It's not. I understand that, but like when Joe says like, okay, well, what if everybody but the top 6 dies? Well, the reason that they're doing this, the reason that they're putting this plan on the floor is to open up the door for the European Super League. So, if there's only 6 clubs remaining in England, by the time that happens, they're already going to be in a league with AC Milan and Real Madrid and Juventus. And they're not going to care because they're going to be counting their money until it blows up, until that bubble bursts. They aren't going to care.
And by the way, that will make for awful football. It might sound like a wonderful idea, but it's awful.
And when you say like this may benefit us, think about it this way: like you already talk about the Glazers only spend money to make the Champions League. But what if the Champions League now is just something that they're automatically in? What's the incentive to then invest?
I did
Also,
just, I did. Sorry, Haider. Can I just finish what I was just going to finish off by saying, well, that hopefully, though, one thing that this does serve to do is that it gives the government a kick up the backside, someone more neutral to come in now and give money to the cause, what they've actually been screaming out for since this all began. And the one final point I do want to make on this, and I will stop there, is that after all this is done, whether the money comes from the Premier League through this idea being changed and eventually it does go through in a different way, or whether the government gives these clubs money, there is then a responsibility and a pressure, I think, on the EFL clubs to look at what they're spending as well and look at the way they're doing business, because there's definitely an argument, I think, in the Championship, especially, that there's too many clubs in that league being chasing the big dream of the Premier League, and they have been far, far outspending their means. They've been spending more money than what they've actually got to even chase it. And even League One and League Two are doing the same now to get in the Championship, because that's become a massive league. The EFL Championship in itself has become a really big league. So I do think when this is all said and done, them clubs, when they've been rescued, they do need to look at how they're doing things moving forward in the future.
Fantastic points. Ciaran, I'm going to let you come in finally. But look, if there is a European Super League, that's the end. That's the end of football. Because at the end of the day, that is why are you doing that? It's purely money. That's it. There's no other reason why you need to do that. The Champions League has stuff that it can work on, but it's fine as that format. For me, the league is bread and butter. I would love to win the Champions League again, but the day that United win the Premier League again, I honestly think I'm going to cry, because it's something which it's so much more difficult to win.
Yeah. But you know why they're doing it as well is they would also like it as if the big kind of notorious clubs just automatically qualify for the Champions League, because these teams want the money that comes from the Champions League without having to put into the effort in the league and actually having to qualify for it. When we go back, what Joe said there towards the end is kind of what I've always been thinking about this, is the fact that while this plan wasn't ideal, especially for the Premier League and the power shift that it will give, if it gives the whole Premier League a kick up the backside to actually do something to help out, or if it gives the government to help out the EFL clubs, I don't care where it comes from, but at the end of the day, you do have to help it out, because it's an overall English football. There's a lot of players that have come in that have been excellent players that have not come through the big clubs. We've been talking about for the whole summer about Jadon Sancho. Jadon Sancho did not come through Manchester City. He came through Watford, who are now in the Championship. Let's say everybody in the Championship lost a load of money and they ceased to exist. You don't see players like Jadon Sancho come in because he doesn't get a chance at a big club because he hasn't been developed properly. And it's the same for a lot of other players. Now, the problem is that if some of these clubs go out of business, because there's a lot of them, I think one of them that someone mentions was Leyton Orient, who have been an excellent kind of team within the EFL leagues over the last couple of seasons, and they have a good history. And we saw it last year. We saw Bolton Wanderers, who only a couple of years ago were in the Premier League and then suddenly are gone. Somebody has to do something to be able to protect these teams. And we can all say, well, if we just give them money now, it's not going to help. But it does, because some of these clubs need the money now. They don't need the money in 2 to 3 years' time. They need money now to be able to continue operating. Like I said, there's been stories out that some clubs in the Championship may not be able to operate in 5 and 6 weeks' time. And yes, it's their fault for certain teams where they're spending way more than they should, but that's because the system's broken and how they get the money. A lot of these clubs are hoping that they get into the Premier League so then they can become more liquid. And the problem is that it's very difficult. Leeds were very lucky that they got in. If Leeds, let's just say the Championship was cancelled and they weren't going to allow Leeds to come into the Premier League, okay, they would have had a huge issue. They probably wouldn't have been able to keep Bielsa. A lot of their players would have had to leave because they spent way more money than they were earning over the past 2 seasons. You would have seen Leeds go down a big spiral because of that, and you might even be talking about them
again.
But again, so that's the issue. We have to look at kind of the system that's in place. You need to have the pyramid of football that's just better. One of the things actually that they mentioned in the plan was for the championship clubs to deal with these clubs that are spending more than they earn is to have a hard salary cap for the championship to stop them trying to overspend just to get into the Premier League. Now, I don't like salary caps in English football, but if it's going to protect some of these clubs, I think that they should try and come with some way of doing that. But they need to change the way it comes in. First, clubs do need a bailout because it's simple. We talk of the Premier League clubs losing a lot of money. The clubs in the lower levels have lost way more match day revenue than the Premier League clubs.
Yeah, in comparison. Look, last thing I will say on this, and Ciaran makes a fantastic point, is that they need money now to survive. If fans come back in and everything sort of works again, then that's what's needed. So maybe there has to be a bit of a give and take. My final word on that, as I said earlier, I think the intention behind it and the grab for power is the thing that bothers me. But saving all these clubs is what it should be about. But it's the Glazers, and it's not just the Glazers. Obviously, I'm not just saying this, Pauly. Not all Americans are like this, don't worry. But, you know, that the intentions of owning these franchises is to make money. And this is a way to cement themselves in a league, probably, as Mark said, which is the most watched league in the world. So, look, we'll just have to sort of wait and see what happens, I suppose. But look, guys, last topic today, Newcastle preview. I'm going to split you into two. Pauly and we'll go with Joe, sure, at the bottom. Yeah, Pauly and Joe. Well, I'm just going to ask you literally a minute, and I will cut you off over a minute. Formation and who you would start. So, Pauly, I'll go with you first, and then after that, it'll be Mark and Ciaran. I'll ask you for your predictions. Now, let's go, Pauly. What is your formation for the Newcastle game?
Keep the formation the same. I go to the back three against PSG and Chelsea, but I keep the formation the same. Who knows? Because like Maguire needs a break, but Bailly's hurt. Do you throw Tate and Mengi in there? Maybe it's time to sink or swim. I think it's too soon. I don't think Solskjaer's ready to just throw him out there. But you know, Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, it'll be Maguire, but like maybe you put Axel Tuanzebe in there. Tellez is returning from Brazil. I don't know if he jumps right into the team. Bruno, Pogba needs to be dropped, but Bruno was just around Ronaldo. I don't know if it's smart to put Bruno around this team right now. Do we need him? Yes, but like, is it smart for him to potentially infect everybody? I don't know, but I'd put the Mason Greenwood up top, Rashford on the left. I'd bring Juan Mata in to play on the right, and then Van de Beek in the middle, and then either Bruno or Pogba next to Fred in midfield.
Nice one. I like that team. Joe, I think we should go through at the back. Do you agree with me, or are you agreeing with Pauly here? Because that defense is shocking. Maguire's just been sent off, as some of the comments have said, and as Pauly said earlier. So, yeah, what would you do?
You're on mute, bro.
Joe, do this one more time, and you are kicked out of Red Devils Talk.
Can that red card mean that he is... I've had a night there today. Can that red card mean that he's banned from United as well? You know, because I just feel like he could do with a couple of games. No, I don't mean that. But I think I agree with Pauly. I think obviously PSG go free there. But if you're going to do that, then I would go free against Newcastle, because I just think it gives us not a game to go with that, you know, before the PSG game. Because if you're just going to change formation for that PSG game with the personnel that they've got, if you're going to just change it, then it could be a bit, you know, it gives Ollie a chance to say, well, actually, if we're going to do that midweek, let's try it out, you know, against, I don't want to say lesser opposition, because Newcastle have been good at times this season, and they've got players who can bother us, especially Sam Maximum down that right-hand side. So I will go free. The only other issue with going three at the back is, have we got three centre-backs who are worthy of a game, if you know what I mean, at the moment. So, you know, yeah, Maguire. Yeah, but don't forget, guys, I had 30 seconds on mute, so he's going to have to give me a bit of...
No, it counts.
Yeah, they got, you know, Maguire. So, yeah, I would get, if they've got the personnel and he thinks they're confident enough and he's ready to go, play them. Bruno, that decision will be taken out of our hands eventually anyway, I think, because obviously if he's got a quarantine or whatever, self-isolate, that'll take care of that. Van de Beek has to start, but you say that for a couple of games now. And then I would stick with the usual. I do like the idea of Mata on the right, actually. I don't think Mason's not ready to... Mason needs to be out, I think, and give Mata a game.
Yeah, no. What I will say,
that's all your fault, guys.
Is anyone timing this? Because I feel like that was about 3
Mate,
minutes.
that was about 7 hours. Okay,
Yeah,
but you know what? You know what?
I was on mute, mate.
That's your fault. That's not the show's fault.
That isn't. Take some accountability, Ed Woodward.
It's person in chair, not in computer, isn't it?
I don't know what you just said. Was that, whatever that was. Anyway, no. What I will say, final thing on this is that it looks like Axel, I was looking up the other day, isn't probably ready to play. He's going to play.
And Bai's apparently not hurt. He played yesterday for 90 minutes.
This is what Onka just said. He said completed 90 minutes. And Luke Shaw could go. If Tellez plays, Luke Shaw could go in the back three, which I think would be a good thing to do. I'd just chuck Tellez straight in. Honestly, we need it.
Yeah.
So anyway, guys, look, Mark, predictions. Don't give me a lecture on why, like Joe did. Just tell me a prediction.
Predictions for what?
The game on the weekend.
No, hang on. I know it's about the game at the weekend.
What? Predict
the score. Prediction of the score of the team.
Britain's Got Talent. Give me your prediction.
The score. I'm gonna go with 3-0.
United.
And who wins the Masked Singer?
I have no idea, Pauly. That's your show, not mine, Sunshine.
I just want random predictions, Mark.
Ciaran, I can't believe you just asked that.
No. Like, just to be clear, I know we're running out of time. Just to be clear, I know what the hell you're going on about, okay? But it wasn't. Yeah, I didn't know whether you were asking score predictions or team predictions.
I mean, I did say score at the beginning, but it's okay. It's okay. I will go. I'll go, Ciaran. Let's wrap up, boys. Ciaran, score.
Yeah. Just so you know, Mark, listening is a skill. Okay, so get used to that one. My prediction is 2-1. I think I'm gonna go with Greenwood scoring 2 goals.
Look, what I will say, last thing I'll say, thank you to all the comments. We didn't have as many tonight, but thank you very much for listening. What I will say is that Ollie has to win. It is each game he has to win now, or he has to not lose, basically, because his job sadly is on the line, and he needs to show that he is up to it and he can turn it around. He's done it before. Let's see if he can do it again. Boys, thank you very much for joining me tonight. Tonight has been absolutely hilarious. And, you know, the next person that messes up their mute button will get kicked out of the stream. So I'm just saying that.
What if it's you?
Then I will get kicked off the stream. No, I'm
WhatsApp before. So
I do so many podcasts that I know that I always have to mute it because this thing picks up everything.
We can't hear you. You're on mute, mate. We can't hear you.
That is awful. Anyway,
did you see him look down in the corner? You had him.
Yeah, you had him.
You are awful. What I will say is, guys, I did a fantastic podcast with the guys from Man Marking Pod. That's a mental health one. We talked about mental health and football. It's something very different, but it was incredible. Aaron, 20-minute long, very long. It was with myself, Dan from Man Marking Pod, and Ryan. He was absolutely brilliant. I used to work with Ryan. He used to be one of the companies that I used to work with. And with Rob Blanchett as well, who'll be hopefully appearing a lot more on the channel. So make sure you check that out because that's out tomorrow at midday. Thank you very much, guys, and we will see you next